Hey everybody, Travis here, and today I'm bringing you a video from the Ultra League in Pokemon Go Battle League. Ultra League has become a little bit controversial because of the presence, shall we say heavy presence, of XL Pokemon, which, as we all know, are limited to players that are level 40 and above, since they're the only ones that can get XL candy. And it's a huge resource sink as well. It costs a ton of Stardust and a ton of candy to get up there, and that means a ton of walking time, or of catching, or whatever, or trading. A number of ways to get them, but they're all difficult. And so what that leads to is kind of a separation of the folks that have XLs and not. Or at least that's the theory. So I'm kind of a data hound. We haven't seen that reflected yet in my Pokemon Go channel. In some of my other content that's more serious stuff, you see that well. But I wanted to bring today not just some gameplay, but an analysis to try to quantify how important XL and Legendaries as well are in the Ultra League. So I've got some gameplay showing my team that I used, and then at the end of the video I've also got kind of a breakout, a little bit of a data analysis on the teams that I saw when I was running back from 2800 back up to Legend in the Ultra League. I kind of played around in the Great League so that I could go down a little bit and see if my team was good enough to get me back up to Legend. The team that you see was, but the main takeaway that I wanted to show is just how important are XLs. So if you're here for that analysis, if you're here from the title for an analysis of how important XLs are, feel free, it won't hurt my feelings if you skip to the end of the video. There's chapter links down below so you can skip over the gameplay and just see that analysis if you want. But let's get into the gameplay, and then we'll have that analysis afterwards, and I hope from one of those two things you can learn something today. Let's get into it. Okay, the team that I'm running is XL Swampert, XL Pidgeot, and XL Scrafty. So I am running a terrible triple XL team. We can talk about that later, but what I'm gonna do here is against Swampert, that's a terrible lead. I'm gonna switch into Pidgeot, and I'm met by a Powder Snow Alolan Ninetales, which is a terrible switch onto a terrible lead. So how am I gonna salvage this? I don't know. I know I can take one Weather Ball comfortably, and what I'm thinking is I'm gonna throw the Feather Dance to debuff, and then I can come back in and I can get some energy advantage on my Stunfisk, which already doesn't really have to shield against Ninetales, but especially doesn't with that double debuff from Feather Dance. So I'm just gonna take this, he's used some energy, and I'm gonna bring that Stunfisk back in to play this now extra advantageous matchup. And super good that he decided to shield that Feather Dance, because that gives me a shield advantage on my switch. So even though I didn't win switch back, I did get quite a bit out of that. So I took that shield advantage, and I'm gonna parlay that into a huge energy advantage that I can hopefully use to flip this around on that Swampert with the bad lead. So I'm gonna use this Rock Slide. I'm gonna keep going. I don't need to shield these double debuffed Weather Balls, so he's at the perfect amount of health for me to just continue to farm down, and then I can threaten the Swampert with a ton of energy. This is gonna be another Weather Ball. Again, double debuffed. You've seen how much they do, not a threat, so here we go. And I expect the Swampert to come back in. I'm actually gonna aggressively swap into the Scrafty. Reason being, I knew the Swampert was coming in, and this is a fairly neutral matchup. I can soak up some of that energy that he generated much better than the Stunfisk can. And then whatever's in the back, whether Scrafty can power through it or my Stunfisk, the Stunfisk has a ton of energy. And he's not switching out immediately. I'm not exactly sure where his switch clock is at, but this is really encouraging. It's making me think that maybe he doesn't want to see Scrafty with what's in the back. Since this is a non-shadow Swampert, I can afford to take one, and I go ahead and decide to use my second shield here. And we're just gonna keep ramping Scrafty up and hope that it can really put a dent in whatever he brings in third. Okay, he is very smart not to shield that power-up punch. And he does get off another Hydro Cannon. This shouldn't kill, but it's gonna put me really low. And what comes in is a Greedent. Okay, so that makes sense why he didn't want to see the Scrafty against this Greedent. Now, my Scrafty is pretty low, but nonetheless, I'm gonna be able to use these triple or maybe even quadruple by this point boosted power-up punches to chip down his health quite a bit. And in fact, he was so concerned about taking too much damage that he threw energy there, which is great. So now I get to use this energy to Earthquake the Greedent, Nothing that he has can one-shot me. I don't have any shields anyway, but my goal here is to get to 2 Rock Slides, so I have 1 to finish off the Greedent, and then 1 to finish off the Swampert, which is low enough that that resisted Rock Slide will KO. And so here I go. I'm 1 move away from a second Rock Slide. I'm pretty confident that that he didn't have a Hydro locked and loaded, and in fact I do get to the Rock Slide and able to finish off the Swampert, which, great news, turned a bad lead and a bad switch into a squeaked out victory. Good to see that the team can do that. All right, we got a Ramblin' Man coming up next, and Stunfisk into Greedent. I just realized now that my graphic is wrong and it says Swampert. You can obviously see it's Stunfisk. The stats and the CP and the moves are correct. But obviously that top guy is the Bear Trap and not the Mud Boy. So this is a fairly neutral matchup here in Stunfisk versus Greedent. What I like to do against some of these really bulky mons, especially if they're neutral in the lead matchup, is I like to throw some Earthquakes at them. They never shield because they know that it's not going to one-shot. If they do, it gives me shield advantage, and that's fine too. So what I like to do is I like to exit this matchup with a lot of energy. You'll see me do this against the Greedent. You'll see me do this against Umbreons and some other things that are pretty neutral to the Stunfisk lead. So I'm going to exit with a lot of energy, and then I'm going to swap into Pidgeot, and I'm going to try to generate some additional energy here so that I can throw either those heavy-hitting Brave Birds or those huge debuff moves at whatever comes in after the Greedent. And he decides to stay in, throwing resisted Bullet Seeds and, you know, not very threatening Body Slams and Crunches. He is going to get me down, and he decides to switch into a Sylveon. So I'm glad to see this here as opposed to against my Scrafty. I'm going to go ahead and debuff with the first one. He intelligently does not shield it. And then I'm going to throw the Brave Bird to either threaten a shield or do some massive damage here. Okay, he shields perfectly. He ignores the bait on the Feather Dance, and he correctly shields on the Brave Bird, so well played to my opponent. I'm going to bring in the Stunfisk now, and I'm going to try to bring this into a switch advantage situation here. I am going to use a shield, which feels really bad. It's a double debuffed move, and it's resisted. The Psyshock or Weather Ball would have been resisted by Swampert. I don't know if they would have knocked out, but I did not want to waste all that energy. And he does a great job of bringing in a Swampert to catch my Rock Slide. Things are not looking great for me. We're still pretty neutral. I'm going to throw this Rock Slide because that's the only use I'm going to get out of it. I might as well take the chip damage because I'm going to get farmed down here by his Swampert. So I'm very, very nervous. Luckily, I was able to get his Sylveon really, really low, so it's not as big of a threat to Scrafty, but clearly now Scrafty is my win con. I've switched into him because I want to ramp up against the Swampert. That's going to let me hopefully knock out the Sylveon in one counter, and it's going to hopefully let me finish off the Greedent very quickly too. So it's all riding on Scrafty at this point, unless I can pull off some kind of a crazy catch with these other 2 Pokemon I have in back. And here we go, his Swampert does get to another Hydro Cannon. It's not going to KO, but I'm going to be very low. Okay, he brings in the Sylveon, and because I was buffed up, and because Counter is a 2-turn fast move versus Charm as a 3, I was able to knock out that Sylveon without taking any damage. And that's going to let me throw this Power-Up Punch, take the last shield, farm down the Swampert, and now the Greedent knows he's done. With the clock coming up, Scrafty probably would have finished even if the Greedent had to move, but with the timer counting down, my other win condition was just to sit out the clock and win with 2 Pokemon versus his 1 remaining. So tight game. Opponent played that pretty well. Some very nice activity there, but we're able to pull it out. So here on this next one, you can see again Umbreon versus Stunfisk is a pretty neutral matchup in the lead. And like I said with the Greedent before, what I'm going to try to do here is I'm going to throw some Earthquakes. I want to either take some shield advantage, which he gave me there, and I want to exit this matchup with quite a bit of energy to threaten something that is more threatened by Stunfisk's moves. And so you'll see I'm gonna absorb some energy here because it's just not all that threatening. And then I'm gonna switch in since I've got energy built up and I've got shield advantage. And against this Umbreon, Pidgeot does okay. I'm gonna go ahead and use one shield just to soak up a little more of that energy. He gave me shield advantage, he's giving me energy advantage, so I'm gonna take those. Okay, and now we've got Muck. So I'm kind of planning, this is another fairly neutral matchup. I'm kind of planning to see this through to the end and either take Switch or take the last shield. And since I debuffed, I don't think I need to shield this. It's the Sludge Wave, and I miscalculate in a big way. I waste a ton of energy. Now luckily, this is a very strong matchup for Stunfisk, especially with that debuff from Feather Dance, but definitely a miscalculation by me. We're gonna see if we can recover that bad play on my part. Okay, since it is debuffed, I don't have to shield the Dark Pulse and I have just enough energy to work with. Now, I'm a little curious why he's played the way he has. And here again, you see that he's got Dark in the lead, he had Dark in the back, and he's choosing to stay in Umbreon versus Scrafty, which is a dominant matchup. And now we see why. A triple Dark team, so all I needed to do was put some pressure on either shields or health, and then Scrafty's gonna be able to clean up the rest of this. So now it's pretty obvious why he played the way he did. My win condition is gonna go straight through Scrafty. He's not using that last shield, which allows me to save my last shield against the Obstagoon, and he sees the writing on the wall. It was gonna be a painful end for Umbreon there. Okay, another bad lead, water into my ground type. So here's what I'm gonna do. Again, I'm gonna try to build up some energy because I know that it takes quite a while for Blastoise to get to Hydro Cannon. It does, and I'm able to catch on the Pidgeot. It's still neutral, but at least it's not super effective, and now I've got a ton of energy on Swampert. Now he switches into Drapion. This is another fairly neutral matchup. Drapion, excellent, and can sling charge moves extremely fast. So we're gonna see how we play this. If I'm getting low, it really is a toss-up. I'm gonna throw the Brave Bird here just to see if they'll give me the switch advantage or a shield, and I'll take a shield. That's okay since Stunfisk is a fairly dominant matchup against Drapion, and now I've got shield advantage. I'm gonna bring that back in. I'll soak up a little bit of energy. If I had thrown the Feather Dance, this would have been debuffed, and it would have been nice to get the debuff and the shield, but sometimes you gotta go for the gold, and I think it works out here. But we're gonna take that move. We're gonna throw some Rock Slides. I'm hoping to get maybe that last shield. This is probably another miscalculation by me. Since he's on his last shield, he probably was hesitant to use it, and I probably could have thrown the Earthquake, which would have knocked him out and been more energy efficient there. So there again, I'm making some misplays in this set. What I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna switch into Scrafty aggressively because he's neutral against Blastoise, and there's so many people that run double something. They run that ABB format, and so I'm thinking possibly Drapion might have been the first of two Dark types. And so I'm gonna choose to use shields on Scrafty, ramp up, and have an absolute monstrous quadruple buffed Scrafty coming into whatever comes in last. If I miscalculate the team, it may be a lose condition, but since he's not switching out, it makes me think that he's gonna let me ramp fully up with Scrafty here, and that's gonna put a lot of pressure on whatever comes in last. If it's a fairy, I pretty much lose. If it's anything else, and it's Greedent, folks. So it wasn't a double Dark, kind of miscalculated there, but it was something that was weak to Scrafty, and I think now it makes sense why he's playing this the way that he is. So despite how bulky Greedent is, we're gonna be able to just punch this thing down. So we're gonna counter, we're gonna use optimal move timing. 2-turn fast move versus 3-turn fast move in this case means I want to throw after 1, 4, or 7. I'm probably never gonna get to 7 against Greedent because it's so spammy, but you see what I'm doing? I think I live this, and I just wanna get as much mileage out of Scrafty as I can. He does live, and he's able to counter down, and now all I need is I've got the power-up punch saved against Blastoise, and with the triple or quadruple buff on Power Up Punch, this should do it. Scrafty brings it home. Okay, Stunfisk into Umbreon. We've seen this one before. You know how I'm gonna play it. I'm gonna build up a bunch of energy, throw an Earthquake, try to chip down its health, and then absorb some energy and try to exit with a shield advantage and a lot of energy. One or the other, or preferably both if we can swing that. So Foul Play, just not threatening at all. We're gonna throw this Earthquake. I doubt they shield because why would they? And we are correct. So we're gonna soak up some more of this dark type energy. If I could, I'd prefer to have Scrafty on this, but my whole lineup does okay against Umbreon. So there again, I've got a lot of energy stored and I'm gonna switch into Pidgeot. Now this looks terrible. Pidgeot into Registeel on paper is one of the absolute worst matchups, but I want you to pay attention to this. And this is part of just knowing your team, knowing what it's capable of, knowing the matchups, because I'm actually gonna get pretty far with this Pidgeot against Registeel. What I've kind of figured out is that Pidgeot versus Registeel, you can typically get a Feather Dance for the debuff and a Brave Bird to do some decent damage. In between those two charge moves that it's gonna take for Registeel to knock you out, you can actually get it down under 50% health. He's sitting at 30 to 40% health here, and double debuffed. So whatever energy he has stored up is gonna be pretty useless against what I bring in. And in fact, watch this. This is the benefit of that debuff. I'm gonna bring in Scrafty, and I'm just gonna tank this Focus Blast. It's a super effective move, but Registeel's very tanky himself, and with the double debuff, it does about 50% of health, which I'd prefer to have that 50% of health, but I'm able to fully farm down that Registeel, and that's gonna let me threaten in a big way anything else that comes in. All right, and it's a Crobat, which is pretty bad. The counters do nothing, but I'm able to land the Foul Play, and I come in aggressively with the Rock Slide, and right there, folks, that's gonna be the game, and you'll see why later on. You'll see the dominoes are setting up here. I have no idea why my opponent did not shield that Rock Slide. That's the most hard-hitting charge move that my Pokemon can throw into his Pokemon. So why not shield it? I don't know. I'm betting here he's got 2 shields left. He's gonna wanna use them, but again, he calls the Rock Slide. And at this point I'm thinking, is he gonna go down, is she gonna go down with 2 shields? So I'm gonna use my shields to get a big advantage here. I'm gonna throw this Rock Slide. That's either gonna knock out the Umbreon or get it really close. That will allow me to threaten the Crobat. Since it's super effective, I'm gonna bring in the Scrafty. I'm gonna use some energy to beef up my Scrafty. And look, because they didn't shield, I'm able to pressure that last shield and or just farm down with the counter. And so really, and here comes the Umbreon. They're gonna use Last Resort, which is very appropriately named in this case. And I'm able to counter down. So people, keep in mind, if you've got shields, use them. They are a critical feature of this game, and be thinking about what my opponent's Pokemon are and what my Pokemon are and which charge moves do the most damage. That's where your shields are best spent. In that case, my opponent would have clearly won the game if they had shielded that Rock Slide from Stunfisk into Crobat. So make good use of your shields, folks. It's good discipline to not use them too fast, but when you have seen your entire opponent's team and you know exactly how to use them the most strategically, do it. Okay, this is gonna be a long game. So it was Stunfisk into Greedent, which we've seen before and talked about before. They switch into Jellicent, and I switch into Pidgeot, which, if they have Bubble Beam and not Ice Beam, is a thoroughly dominant matchup for Pidgeot. They have nothing that hits at all. Now, it's a really long matchup because we're both throwing debuff moves at each other the entire time. But the way that this ends after an eternity of, swinging at each other is they're gonna be quadruple debuffed. I'm gonna come out with 100 energy, a full bar of energy, and about half health. So you're gonna see I will be debuffed, so that energy I'll probably want to switch and save for later when I won't be hitting like a limp noodle. But I'm gonna come out with full energy, shield advantage maybe, and definitely energy advantage. So I'm gonna keep farming down, I'm gonna drink some coffee because, you know, what else am I gonna do during this? Now, what I think I'm gonna do, and you see me setting up dominoes here, this is the kind of macro strategy that you wanna be thinking about if you're trying to level up your game. The Greedent comes back in, and I'm gonna throw one of my 2 loaded Feather Dances at it. And then I'm going to switch into Swampert. So if he wants to stay in this matchup, fine. He's gonna lose because it was neutral, but now he's double debuffed. And I know that if he switches out, it forces his Greedent against my Scrafty at the end, which is a perfect scenario, especially since I have a move still locked and loaded on Pidgeot to threaten either this Swampert or to debuff the Greedent. So things are looking really good because of how we were able to play that mid matchup and leverage that against the Greedent. Here, I'm gonna go ahead and use one of my 2 shields because Scrafty doesn't really need them against Greedent, and I want to either get shields down or threaten the Swampert. The Swampert is my only real threat for the rest of this time. And so here he comes. He's gonna have to throw more energy, which is absolutely perfect. That means less energy on the stuff that I care about. I am gonna come in and throw the Feather Dance. Arguably, I could have gone ahead and brought in the Scrafty, but he catches on the Greedent, which great catch, but strategically not the right thing to do. Now I'm able to switch in my Scrafty. I get that alignment that I wanted, and it's gonna be even more dominant because he's double debuffed. Scrafty's gonna go to town here completely unchallenged, and then he's gonna exit with a shield and probably a full bar of energy to finish off that Swampert. Yeah, there again, people, always be thinking about not just what is on the screen, but what's about to be on the screen. Think about, it's just like in chess, you wanna think 2 or 3 turns ahead of time. If I make this, how is my opponent gonna respond? And in this case, I knew that I could switch the Stunfisk versus Greedent matchup to be from neutral to dominant by using one of my Feather Dances, and then I could set up the dominoes for Scrafty against Greedent later, which obviously worked out very well. So okay, here's another great picture. When you win the lead, same thing I was talking about. When you win the lead, you don't just want to think about, hooray, I won the lead. Congratulations, now what comes next? If it's dominant, like Stunfisk against their Clefable, you've got to be thinking, what am I going to switch into when they switch? And you've got to be fast, because they're not going to stay in that matchup long. In this case, I know that Scrafty has no play against Clefable. I do not want to have that matchup. So I'm thinking, great, I won lead, but because they have a fairy, if Scrafty is even close to viable against what they bring in, that's where I want to use it, because that's the only place that I'm going to get any use out of it. And in fact, they bring in Swampert, which is a fairly neutral matchup against Scrafty, and so I'm able to get a lot of mileage out of it, where if it was lined up against a fairy, that would be a really bad deal. So because I know that Stunfisk does not need shields to beat Clefairy, I'm going to go ahead and use all my shields there to maintain alignment and maintain switch advantage. So, which is a great thing to do. I am able to hit the Talonflame with a foul play and get shields down. And now I'm going to bring in Pidgeot. I obviously don't want to take any flame charges, and he's got energy advantage because I need my Stunfisk to be against the Clefable in the end. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to throw this energy, but then I want you to check this out. I am going to stop attacking here. And you see that I stop attacking just for a few seconds. I'm going to do a video on this. Wallower is an excellent and highly skilled content creator and player who has a video on stopping attacking. It's an advanced move, and it's pretty rare, but when you need it, you really need it. You want to stop attacking when 2 things are true. 1, you need an energy advantage in the final matchup, and 2, the thing that you're about to bring in to farm down is not a threat. So Clefable does not threaten Stunfisk, even with energy. And so I wanted to get extra energy on Stunfisk because I needed to have that Rock Slide locked and loaded to finish the Talonflame. So what you saw me doing there, and again, I'll do a full breakout on this on a separate video when I start doing some mechanic stuff. But what you saw me doing there is I was going for 2 Rock Slides. It did not matter how many charms or how many charge moves that Clefable threw at me. It was not going to knock out Stunfisk. And so my goal was to have 2 Rock Slides built up, 1 to finish the Clefable, and 1 ready to immediately throw at the Talonflame to knock it out. So a little bit of skillful play there on my end. I had a good advantage, but the opponent definitely played it well and could have brought it back. It probably would have been a win without the stop attacking, but always good to utilize and practice your advanced mechanics when you get the chance. Okay, so the last thing I wanted to talk about, and what you may have skipped straight to if you didn't want to watch the slow Ultra League gameplay, is my analysis of the frequency of different types of Pokemon in Ultra League. Specifically, the prevalence, the frequency of XL Pokemon. And I did a little bit of assessment on Legendary and Mythicals too, because obviously those are also very expensive and a little bit inaccessible. XLs are probably even harder to get than Legendaries or Mythicals, depending on the specific situation. You saw me, if you watched the gameplay, using a Pidgeot. Pretty easy, right? Everyone's got a good Pidgey. There's been a bazillion of them around since the inception of the game, so you probably have a good one. They're only 1K to walk, so you can generate candy pretty fast. But definitely there are some XL Pokemon out there that are truly absurd and ridiculous to get. And it's, well, I won't give you my opinion, but they're hard to get. And that may not be the greatest thing for game balance or for getting new players to participate. So what I really want to show here is I gathered data from a couple hundred games, several days worth of sets, and I wanted to see just how common are XLs, which is sort of my proxy to say how important is it to have XLs on your team if you want to compete in the high expert into legend rank in Ultra League. So what I did was this breakout here, and you're gonna see some legends here. On the right, you can see I'm tracking XL Pokemon, legendary Pokemon, and then anything that's non-XL or legendary. And that other category here is for the team assessment you'll see in a second. So of all the individual Pokemon that I saw, 56% of them were XL. So over half of the Pokemon that I saw during these very high number of games that I calculated for were in fact XL. That's a pretty impressive statistic on its own. I've saved the best for last, so hang on with me, but that alone is pretty telling, right? If over half of the total Pokemon you see are XL in the high expert to legend range, that's quite a bit, right? That means you're playing at a disadvantage if you don't have them. 17% on top of that were legendary, and then that means the remaining 33% were non-XL or legendary. And just to add some extra data to that, of the non-XL and legendary, so of that 33% that was not XL or legendary, 40% of that 30% were starters. In most of those, let's see, not most, so 41% of the 30%, so something like 15 or 16% of everything that you see was a starter. And of those, about half were Swampert. So Swampert is our absolute hero as far as accessible Pokemon, and that's saying something since it has a Community Day exclusive move that some folks can't get in Hydro Cannon. But Swampert, obviously a great Pokemon for PvE as well as PvP, and it's really holding its own even in Ultra League, which is now dominated by XLs and Legendaries. So to keep the analysis going here, those are the percentages of individual Mons, but I want to look at teams too. So the number of fully XL teams that I saw was 18%. So 1 out of every 5 teams that I ran into was 3 XL Pokemon. 1 out of 5, that's, 20% isn't bad. You can probably compete against the 4 out of 5 that don't have those XLs. And so that's not the absolute worst statistic that we're gonna see here by any stretch. So then moving on, 27%, if we include legendaries, 27% of all the teams that I saw had 3 Pokemon that were either XL or legendary. So just as an example, something like a Giratina, Politoed, Talonflame, just picking things out of midair. That includes a legendary and 2 XLs, so that would count in that. So if we broaden it to full teams composed of difficult to get things, about 1 in 4, right? 27% are either fully XL or legendary. leaving 73%, of course, to be blended with non-XL or Legendary. So these next two are a little bit interesting. I looked at teams that have the percentage of teams I encountered that have at least one Legendary or at least one XL. And as I told you, I saved the best for last, I think. So teams with at least one Legendary is 45%. Just under half of teams had at least one Legendary Pokemon there. That's, you know, it's a little bit difficult to say if that's a good or a bad thing. Most of the PvP relevant Legendaries, especially in Ultra League, have had several rotations in and out. They're maybe a little bit easier to get than some of the XL Pokemon. And so, you know, 45% of teams featuring a Legendary, I don't know, you make your own decision on whether you think that's acceptable or not. But what I will say is this is the last and probably most damning statistic on the XL system. The percentage of teams featuring at least one XL Pokemon was 95% in my analysis, which means that you have almost 100% chance of facing an XL Pokemon in any given game. That's saying quite a lot, I think. And I would guess this data was gathered in Season 9, but with more time for people to level those things up and walk them or trade or gather or whatever, catch things. I would expect that this is, if not the same, then even worse. Now that people have had more time to see how impactful XLs can be, as well as more time to walk them or generate the candy or however they need to get them. So I'm betting that almost 100% of teams at the Legend or run up to Legend ranks and ratings are going to feature at least one XL Pokemon from now on into the future. There again, I'll let you make your own decision on whether you think that's a good thing for the health of the game or not, but the data is what it is, and it's very clear that if you want to compete at the Legend level in Ultra League, you will see lots of XLs. Whether that means they're a guaranteed win or not, again, we can have that debate all day long, but they are clearly very, very prevalent, very common, and I think with players at that skill level, that tells you what's good. Those players know what is good, and they're using what is good and optimal to try to climb those ranks. And so I think this is very telling assessment. So I hope that this is interesting for you. Again, this is a very long video because it includes both the gameplay and the analysis. I might separate them out and just post the analysis video, but of course with chapters you can just skip right to it. So it's already been pretty long. I'm gonna get off the stand here and leave you alone until the next time. But as usual, I appreciate the support. If you value this content, if you think it's good and helpful, like, comment, subscribe, whatever you choose to do. If you want to inspire me to make some more of this content more frequently, I do have a Patreon page. You can go to patreon.com/TravisLane, and there you can sign up for my Pokemon Go channel, the Pogo supporter, the Pogo Zone tier, for $5. It's $5 per post. I know that I'm not as frequent as some of the content creators, so if you feel like seeing this kind of assessment and guide is worth a couple bucks to you, that would be really meaningful for me to continue making this content, very helpful. And that way you're not paying for something that you're not getting, right? If I'm not posting, you're not having to pay for it. So I decided to switch to that because I think that's more honest, and that makes me make better things. And hopefully that is something that you'll do to support me. So really appreciate it. Leave a comment if you have some other ideas for assessments that you'd like to see or analysis you'd like to see. I consider myself to be a good but not great battler. I'm definitely not as skilled as some of the really top tier folks that you can find on YouTube. I hope it's valuable to see my gameplay and hear my assessments, but something that I can bring to the table is some of this data analysis and presentation that is something I enjoy doing and is something that I leverage in my professional life as well. So if you have anything else you'd like to see, let me know. Would be happy to support, and I'll see you next time.